At one point in history, a single sack of this spice was worth more than gold.
It could buy a house in Amsterdam, it could fund a voyage across the world, and the Dutch East India Company was willing to kill to control it. This is the story of nutmeg, the spice that made the Netherlands rich and left a trail of suffering behind it. Today, we'll follow the journey of one small spice from a remote group of islands to the heart of global empire. We'll explore why nutmeg was so valuable, how the VOC built a monopoly through violence, what happened on the Banda Islands, and why the consequences of this spice trade still matter today. This is not just a story about flavor, it's a story about power. Chapter 1. Why spices were worth more than gold. To modernize, it's hard to imagine spices being worth anything extraordinary. But in the 16th and 17th centuries, spices changed everything. Nutmeg was believed to preserve food, cure disease, protect against plague. In a world without refrigeration or modern medicine, spices were essential, and nutmeg was rare. At the time, nutmeg only grew naturally in one place on Earth, a tiny group of islands in Southeast Asia called the Banda Islands. Europe's demand exploded. Whoever controlled nutmeg didn't just control a product, they controlled wealth. Chapter 2. Enter the VOC. When the Dutch East India Company was founded in 1602, its mission was clear: control the spice trade. The VOC quickly realized that competing on price wasn't enough. To guarantee profits, they needed something more powerful, a monopoly. And nutmeg was the perfect target. VOC ships sailed halfway around the world to reach the Banda Islands, not to trade fairly, but to dominate. At first, the Bandanese people traded willingly with multiple European powers. The VOC saw this as a problem. Competition threatened profit, so the company made a decision that would define its legacy. Chapter 3. Building a monopoly. The VOC demanded exclusive control over nutmeg production. The Bandanese refused. They had traded freely for generations and saw no reason to surrender their autonomy. The VOC responded with force. Dutch forts were built.
Trade routes were blockaded. Rival European traders were driven out. Still, the Bandanese resisted. For the VOC, resistance meant lost revenue. And lost revenue was unacceptable.
Chapter 4. The Banda Islands Massacre. In 1621, the VOC's Governor-General, Jan Pieter Zoon Koen, launched a brutal campaign to secure total control. Dutch forces invaded the Banda Islands. Villages were destroyed. Local leaders were executed. Much of the population was killed, enslaved, or forced to flee. Historians estimate that the vast majority of the Bandanese population was wiped out. The islands were then repopulated with enslaved laborers and overseen by Dutch planters. Nutmeg production continued, now entirely under VOC control. The monopoly was complete, and profits soared. Nutmeg becomes a global weapon. With control of the Banda Islands, the VOC manipulated supply. Nutmeg trees outside their control were destroyed. Prices were kept artificially high. In Europe, nutmeg became a symbol of wealth and power. In the Netherlands, the spice trade helped fund a booming economy, naval expansion, cultural growth during the Dutch Golden Age. All of it built on a spice few Europeans had ever seen grow, and few ever questioned the cost. Chapter 6. The long-term consequences. The effects of the nutmeg monopoly reached far beyond the 17th century. Entire cultures on the Banda Islands were erased. Colonial systems of forced labor became normalized. The idea that corporations could use violence to secure profit was reinforced. Eventually, the monopoly collapsed. Nutmeg plants were smuggled to other parts of the world. Prices fell, but the damage was already done. The wealth extracted from nutmeg helped shape modern capitalism. The suffering remained, largely forgotten. The true cost of flavor. Today, nutmeg sits quietly on supermarket shelves. Its past is invisible. But behind that small spice is a history of conquest, exploitation, and empire. The Dutch East India Company didn't just trade nutmeg, it transformed it into a weapon. A reminder that even the smallest things can reshape the world, and that prosperity often comes at a cost paid by others. If stories like this matter to you, consider subscribing. More untold chapters from the age of the VOC are coming.